Hello, everyone. Welcome back to The Art of Being a Woman. I'm your host, Courtney, and today we are discussing the art of detaching from outcomes. I am very excited to get into this topic this week because when you fully grasp how to detach from outcomes, so many things change. Not only do we change internally and we become happier, lighter, and more optimistic, but externally we start to notice that things are starting to align for us naturally and beautifully all on its own. And that is something that I want each and every one of us to experience in life as soon as possible and for as long as possible, so that we could really just live life to the fullest and enjoy it to the fullest, regardless of what life throws our way. As always, we're going to get into 4 steps that I covered on my Instagram account at She Is Artfully Woman, where I post a lot of the topics that we discuss here on the podcast in a written format. I also post on Threads. Most of my content on Threads centers around signs from the universe that we receive subtly, sometimes obviously, that show us whether or not we feel we are on the right path or the aligned path for us and our soul. So if that sounds like something that you are interested in, I would love for you to join me on Threads. It's a really nice, genuine space, in my opinion. I've connected with so many amazing people there, and I respond to every single comment within 24 hours on both platforms. So I look forward to seeing you over there. Now, the 4 steps are as follows. 1. Be honest about what you've attached to the outcome. Step 2. Don't delay the feeling you think the outcome will give you. Step 3. Make your focus the journey, not the outcome. Step 4. Let the outcome surprise you. I wrote about this topic in July, and now we are in January of 2026. So a lot has happened since the summer, and I look forward to not only elaborating more on what I wrote, I also look forward to sharing my lived experiences and the positive changes I've noticed in my own life through detaching from outcomes. Let's get into step 1. Be honest about what you've attached to the outcome. It's very natural and almost a default reaction as people for us to try to predict outcomes, because that's how we truly keep ourselves safe. That's how we feel secure in life. If we were to never plan ahead for anything, we could really be living in a tremendous amount of chaos. So it's very understandable why we try our best to achieve certain outcomes in life. But as we start to grow older, we learn and we realize that life just doesn't work that way. We can really have a great plan, a detailed plan, a blueprint that someone gave us, someone that achieved exactly what it is we have our mind set on. And it can just not work for us. And things just start to unravel and fall apart. When we experience situations like that in our life, it's never a coincidence. And it's never God or the universe trying to ruin your life or make you miserable, even though it can really feel that way in the moment. I know that I've experienced moments in my life where I have felt that exact same way, when things just didn't go according to plan. I remember when I was 18, I moved out of my parents' house and I was going to live with a friend, and we had a whole plan and it sounded perfect. Things did work out for the first 3 months, but after those 3 months, it wasn't working anymore. And that whole plan that I had for how my future would unfold came crashing down, and I really had to make a decision to go back home to my parents. And that was like a big ego blow. Honestly, I really had to admit that I didn't know exactly what I was doing with my life. I had to admit that I needed help and some guidance when it comes to life. But when I was that 18-year-old that moved out of her parents' home, and that realization hit me that this is not going to work according to plan, I had to really weigh the pros and the cons. Was I really willing to force a specific outcome because it was something that I planned to prove to myself and everyone else that I can get my way no matter what in life, or that I was right and I know what's best for me all the time? Or was I willing to be embarrassed, honestly, take the L, and pretty much start from scratch and come up with a new plan? Luckily, I chose the latter. I decided to take the ego blow, deal with that embarrassment, because I don't know how I knew certain things at certain times in my life, but I remember going through that situation, knowing deep down in my soul that as chaotic and catastrophic as my life was in that moment, I knew that in 5 years from that day, I will be able to fully understand why I had to go through such chaos and such a dramatic shift in my life. Of course, I didn't have proof of that when I was going through it. I was really going off of blind faith, which is scary because you can have faith and the path is still unclear. So I fully understand that having trust doesn't immediately solve your problems, but it is the ultimate way through your problems, as cheesy as that sounds. It is the only thing that will get you through those uncertain times in your life. And that's sort of the point of chaos in our life. It forces us to really admit to ourselves that we are not the ones that are in control of how our lives unfold, as much as we want to believe that we are. So if you are currently in a stage in your life where you expected something, you expected your life to unfold a certain way, and no matter how hard you try, it's not working out for you, ask yourself why you really need your plan to work out. Why is that the best option and the only option? When you really get honest with yourself and you realize that the answer to those questions are coming from fear or anxiety or insecurity, then you have the opportunity to focus on those aspects of your life so that you can start to uncover what's truly meant for you. Because think about it, you never want to go down a path in life because you feel like you have to, or your life will fall apart if you don't. That's a fear-based way of living your life. And if you go down that road, you're not going to be happy. Maybe short term, but not long term. That's what causes those midlife crises that people have. Sometimes we go through the midlife crisis when we're younger, which I think is a blessing, because at least you get to address the issue head on before you have built foundations on things that were kind of shaky. So when you do get honest about what you've attached to the outcome, try to heal those things. Try to overcome those things. And I talk about fear, I talk about anxiety, and I talk about insecurity on so many episodes in this podcast. So go through the episodes and get to the root of it. Once you work on that, I promise, the reasoning behind why you're going through what you're going through will become more clear. Step 2. Don't delay the feeling you think the outcome will give you. This step is a little bit harder to do, in my opinion, because it requires us to push past limiting beliefs that we have. There are things that we tell ourselves that we believe are so true that we never question them. I'm going to use my 18-year-old self as an example for this episode. When I originally left my house, it was because my family was a lot more religious than I was. And at the time, I didn't believe that it would be possible for me to live in their house and explore religion for myself in my own way. I definitely tried to negotiate with them, so to speak. When I was younger, I was definitely a little bit more rebellious. I would do things even though it wasn't the rules of the house. But it was very clear that if I continued being rebellious with my religious beliefs, that things would just be very hostile. So I made a decision to leave my house when I was 18 to live with a friend so that I could explore a really different version of myself, one that wasn't forced to fit in and belong. Now that I'm 26 years old, I can look back at that story and understand where I was coming from, but I also understand that I sort of ran away from my problem because eventually I would have had to come back to my family and I would have had to make a decision. Am I going to conform to their religious beliefs every time I'm around them to make them comfortable and then run away when I want to be my own type of person that doesn't follow those religious beliefs? Or am I going to sit with the discomfort that they're angry with the way that I'm choosing to live my life and deal with their disappointment in my choices and push through that discomfort until things settle and calm down? Obviously, everything happens for a reason. So I have no regrets when it comes to what I did. I believe I really needed to go through it to learn my lesson. But what ended up happening was, by everything blowing up in my face and me having to move back home, I had to deal with that discomfort. I had to deal with that fear that I had that me and my family would always be at odds as long as I wasn't as religious as them. And because I was forced to deal with that, I no longer have that issue with my family anymore. Surprisingly, when I did move back home, the conversations were different. My family was more open to meeting me in the middle in terms of where I was at religiously, which was a massive step. Because I promise you, when I was a teenager, there was no budging. That's why I truly was so rebellious, in my opinion. But I share this story because I kept on delaying that feeling of religious freedom instead of really facing my fear and doing it right away. I could have technically decided to put my foot down when I turned 18 and decided that they're going to have to be upset with my religious decisions if that's how they feel. But I'm still going to choose to really discover myself in that area of life. And the amazing thing about not delaying the feeling that we think the outcome will give us is that you realize that you didn't need a specific outcome to really achieve what it is you were trying to achieve. Because many times it's not even that we're attached to an outcome. We're trying to experience a feeling that we think is inaccessible to us. And we think that something outside of ourselves is going to give it to us. But that's when we get stuck. That's when we get too attached. And that's what creates that fear and that insecurity and the anxiety. So consider an area in your life where you are having a hard time detaching from your expectations and specific outcomes, and really ask yourself and get to the root of what it is that you're trying to feel. How do you think you'll feel when you achieve whatever it is that you have your mind set on? Is it peace? Is it freedom? Is it love? Is it success? And start making a conscious choice to do everything in your power to feel that way now without the outcome. Because I promise you, there are other ways to achieve that feeling. Also, before we move on to step 3, I just want to emphasize, if we are only willing to feel whole and these emotions that we think the outcome will give us when we achieve our outcome, then all we're doing is delaying ourselves from being happy. This is something that really requires us to challenge any limiting beliefs we have. And I'm pretty sure that if we are attaching to outcomes, it's because we have some limiting beliefs. We think certain things are true and they're not necessarily true all the time. They're not set in stone. Step 3, make your focus the journey, not the outcome. Many times when we are attached to an outcome, we kind of stay stuck on the future and the aftermath of achieving whatever it is we want to achieve. But what that does is it takes us out of the present moment, which doesn't sound that dramatic. Who cares? Why do we have to be in the present moment every single second of our lives? Why can't we think about our future, be excited for our future? I get it. I have done the same thing to myself so many times in life. But what I've noticed is when I am focusing on the future more than I am on the present, which is literally each second as it passes us by, I am not happy because I am not satisfied with where I'm at currently. And in order to really feel whole, feel happy, feel free, feel content, at peace, fill in the blank, we need to fully love our present moment regardless if it's fulfilled our expectations or not. That is truly how you feel whole. But that is not always easy to do, especially when we're not loving our current circumstances and things are falling apart. It's almost impossible to be happy in those moments, and it almost feels like torture to be in the present moment when things are just seemingly going so downhill. But if you think of movies and how they're depicted, you'll see how the beginning of the movie is pretty chill. You're getting to know the main character. Then there's some tension and the plot thickens. There's some sort of problem that they have to solve and things go wrong. But ultimately, that's where their life starts to change because they're forced to change. And when they decide that, you know what, I'm going to make the most out of this problem that I'm facing and I'm going to use it to my advantage, they end up being so incredibly happy and successful by the end of the movie. But imagine we're watching a movie where the main character has some goals for themselves. They're impressive, but it's not a challenge. And they achieve them. And that's the end of the movie. Is that something that anybody wants to watch? No, because the point of achieving something is the journey. It's who you become on your way to achieving what it is that you want. Not only that, what makes life even more interesting is when you achieved way more than you thought you could. That's what really makes a good story. But if we were to avoid that journey, avoid being in the now, we're going to keep ourselves stuck. There's a very famous quote. It's by Rumi, who is one of my favorite poets. He says, "As you start to walk on the way appears." This is so key in life. In order to gain clarity on which direction you should be heading on in life, you need to really be as present with yourself as possible and just take one small step forward. You need to only focus on your next step, especially when life is giving you no other choice. That doesn't mean to never plan for anything in life. Obviously, you can have plans, but when you start to notice that those plans are not happening, that's when you accept that this is not in your control and you reassess mentally what is the best next step that you can take for yourself. Don't start thinking about the next 5-10 steps because that's going to give you anxiety. That is what anxiety is when we are too focused in the future. Just figure out that next step. And when you make that next step, that's when you'll figure out the following step. And eventually, if the steps you're taking are aligned, the next step will be more clear and more obvious. It's going to seem so simple, but it requires us to be in the here and now, and it requires us to be willing to go on this journey of life rather than fabricate it. Sometimes when we get attached to specific outcomes in life, we're not really trying to live life. Living life means we are exploring. We're getting to know ourselves. We're getting to know why we're here. We're getting to know what we're meant to do. But if we are so strict on every step we take and not leaving any room for life to guide us, that's not living life. That's trying to control life. And that is honestly what leads to complete chaos. Step 4, let the outcome surprise you. This is key, but this is also very hard if you are a control freak. It's kind of harsh when I say it like that, but I can say it because I was a control freak for most of my life, and I still work on it. It definitely is much easier for me now that I have really surrendered a lot of the quote-unquote control that I thought I had over my life. But it is definitely a challenge in the beginning when you're so used to feeling responsible for every little thing that happens to you. And honestly, to those of us that are kind of control freaks, it's not necessarily that we love to be a control freak. No one really wants to feel so worried about things going wrong all the time. It's just something that we learned to do when we were young so that we would feel safe and secure in our life. Perhaps we grew up with a lot of chaos, whether we moved homes a lot, we moved schools a lot, our family dynamic changed a lot. So all of that change and that unpredictability felt so overwhelming that we, by default, decided to micromanage things so that things can't shake us like that again. I believe every single person has one area in their life where they go through these really intense transformations and changes in their life. Whether it's with your home, you're always moving homes no matter what, and you don't know why, it's just nothing sticks. Perhaps it's your friend group. No matter what, your friend group is constantly changing. Friendships are coming and going. It can be your personality. Perhaps your personality is just changing so drastically and you don't have control over it. You're just going through so many intense experiences in life that you're forced to change. This is all normal, but instead of looking at it as if it's something bad and it's something you need to protect yourself from, try your best to embrace it and allow it to really surprise you. Let it surprise you in the way that it's clearing out something that is completely not meant for you, because what's meant for you is so much better than you can possibly imagine. And allow a better path, a better experience of life to unfold. When I ended up moving back with my parents, I was just grateful that they let me move back in, honestly, because I just knew that living with a friend was not going to work out long term. But moving back in with my family ended up surprising me so much because I ended up getting exactly what I wanted and more. I ended up being able to be my own authentic self in terms of how religious I was. And they were accepting of it, which was something I could have never fathomed at the time. And on top of that, I was truly able to find a really good balance. I was able to respect where I was at religiously, and I was able to respect my family where they were at religiously, meaning I'm not going to change who I am for you, but also I'm not going to expect you to change for me. I think before I moved out at the time, I really thought that my family just didn't get me or they didn't get where I was coming from. So I had to leave because they'll never understand. But when I moved back in and I stayed in my house, I was really forced to learn that it goes both ways. I need to be accepting of the fact that their relationship with religion is very serious to them. And I need to respect it as much as I respect my freedom to make my own decisions with religion. Obviously, that is just my example. Everyone's example is going to be different. Sometimes it has nothing to do with feeling more free to be yourself. Perhaps it's more financially related. Perhaps it's your health. It can be so many different things. But it truly doesn't matter what exactly the circumstance is, because the lesson remains the same. We have to accept those moments in life when things don't go our way and embrace it as much as we can and trust, even through the doubt and through the discomfort, that there's something on the other side that's far better for us. Otherwise, we would never be put through it. I truly believe that if something does blow up in our face and it seems crazy, like a freak accident type of crazy, we are being protected from going down a wrong path in life, whether we can prove it or not. I think life tends to prove itself over time, but that could just be me. Thank you for listening to this episode. I would love to hear your personal experiences with detaching from outcomes in life, if you've done it before and how it worked out for you. Or perhaps you want to share certain areas in your life where it is really hard for you to let go of certain expectations because perhaps you really did put in the work towards something and it really is just not working out for you the way that you think it should. Feel free to leave a comment on this episode, or you can message me privately. I respond to every message, and I would love to hear from you, truly. Thank you for taking time out of your day to listen to this episode. It means the world to me. Please rate this podcast if you enjoyed this topic. It really helps this podcast get pushed out. The algorithm with podcasts is a little different than Instagram, TikTok, and all these other platforms, so things don't get pushed out as much. It's really the engagement that does the work. I hope you have an amazing week. I love you all. Until next episode, bye for now.